Hey, just looking, do we know how many we have on here?
We have 43 participants currently.
Great. Okay, good. I love seeing people being engaged at this stage. It's fantastic. So, yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I'm here. I'm from KMBR. I'm just gonna sorry, just give me a second to share my screen. Okay, everyone can see this? No? You guys can see it, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm here to talk to you about Cedar Hill Middle School seismic replacement. Um, so the team that's on tonight, I'm not sure if you can see others, but the four of us are here. Greg is on the screen over here from our office. I'm Kate Lemon, I'm the principal at KMBR. Stefan Chan is our project manager. He was on site and met some of the school staff a few weeks back. And Joanna has been accompanying me at the meetings. She's also part of our team. So at KMBR, we have about 65 years of experience in architecture. I am a fourth or fifth generation partner. Greg is also one of our partners who is semi-retired but still working with us. We are very passionate about school design. We have a long history of doing school design and are really interested in doing things right the first time. And we pride ourselves on our public engagement and our design process where we involve the community and the school in the design. We are leaders in education in BC. So we've been doing this for many, many years, and we have more than 200 projects around the province, including many on Vancouver Island currently. We have about 75% of our work is in education. So everyone in our office is well-versed in designing schools. And then we also specialize in sustainable design. So we have a lot of LEED projects, net zero projects, and it's not on here, but I also have a passive house project currently in the works. And I'm here today to talk to you about the school and the visioning process and to kick off the engagement. So Cedar Hill Middle School is a seismic replacement project. So the school is ranked H1, which means it's the highest priority for need for seismic improvements, which is why it's come up on the list. The new school that we're working on will be for 575 students and include the neighborhood learning centers space. This is a life safety project, so the structure is going to be built to current code and meet the seismic requirements for the area. It also is targeting sustainable design. So we're looking at a net zero project, something which is a step up from the LEED in terms of the sustainability target. We have been working, so Greg's been working with the school district for the past maybe 4 or 5 years even, working on getting the funding set up with them. So we now have funding for the school from the province, as well as some money that the school district is putting in for the new school. It is a 15-month design process, and it kicked off a few weeks ago. So we're right at the very beginning of the process. There's no design yet. We're first listening to everybody, and then we will start to work on the design in the months to come. And we're tasked with doing the stakeholder engagement. So the school district and our design team here at KMBR are looking for input from parents, staff, students, the feeder schools, our neighbors, the neighborhood associations, and the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, as well as other Indigenous groups. This is just to give an idea of how long a timeline we're talking about. So if we're starting off here, we are here in the early pre-design stage, so we're not in design yet. And it is a nearly 4-year process to get us through to the completion of construction in 2025. So the first about 15 months is the design. And right now we are in this pre-design. We're in November here, so we're just starting. And at the top here, we have multiple phases. So we get into schematic, design development, and then working drawings before we go into construction. And throughout the pre-design, which is now the schematic design and the design development, there are multiple opportunities for public engagement and for stakeholder input. So we've already started that. Some of you may have heard your kids coming back or teachers talking about it. We have already been walking through the school, and then we've had the senior administration at the school doing engagement with their staff and their students. And we have been working with the school district. So this is where we're at currently. And I just wanted to walk you through the pre-design, which is the phase we're in now. So in pre-design, we're doing a visioning process and we're doing programming. And right now, today, we're doing a visioning process, and we will end by inviting you, everyone who's here and others that you talk to out there, to fill in a survey and give us some information and help us with the vision for the school. So the visioning process is essentially exploring the broad principles or the pedagogy or the long-term goals of the school. This is the overarching goals that the community has and the school has. When we get into programming, we're going to start talking about what is the square footage that we need for different spaces, what is the functional requirement, so does it need a sink, how many doors does it need, and what are the relationships between the spaces, the heights, does it need natural daylight, does it need not to have natural daylight if it's something like a drama or a theater. So we will get into that next month. And there will be lots of opportunity to talk about that with everyone. But for the current goal for this month is the visioning process. So we just want to talk about what is the big picture goal for the school. So through this process, we will hear from each of the groups and the general public, and we put together a vision statement and design drivers. So when we hear that there are certain things that there's consensus around, those will become design drivers, and they'll help us to map out or to make decisions as we go forward with the design. So essentially what we're doing today will guide us, will tell us the kind of school that your community needs and wants, and will guide us through the design process going forward. So this is not the only opportunity for input. This is just the first opportunity. So as I said, the next phase will be schematic design. So I'm just going to quickly dive into pre-design and schematic design and give you an idea of the stakeholder input opportunities. We have, this is, so the first bar here is representing our visioning, which is happening this month. We've had multiple design sessions in the school, and there are more to come in the coming weeks. We also are launching the survey today, looking for input from others. We will take questions at the end. And then we gather all that information. We put together a preliminary visioning report. We review it with the committee at the school district, which includes some of the senior staff at the school. And they can take it on to other stakeholder groups. They give us their input, and then we may revise it until we get it right, until it reflects exactly what the community is looking for. Once that final vision statement is adopted, then we move on to the next process, which is the programming. And at that point, we also have multiple user group workshops to talk about programming, engaging all of the stakeholders. We put together a draft report. We have those opportunities again for feedback, and then we have our final programming report. So that's just what we do before we even start designing. And then after that, we get into schematic design. So we use that as our roadmap for schematic design. And when we're making decisions, as we have to do in design, we have a certain amount of money to build it. We have to make decisions between different priorities, and we use that. We know that the community has told us that this is what matters, and we use that to make decisions in the design. So in the schematic phase, again, we will have multiple workshops with different users. We will also have our second public open house. It'll be a different format than this one. Usually we will have some very early design drawings up, so probably a site plan, perhaps some floor plans. Again, it will be very early phase. We're looking for neighbor and community feedback, and then we will use that to think about how we can modify the design as we go forward. And again, we can have multiple revisions and feedback and review with the various stakeholders and the committee. And then we get to our final schematic design. In this case, once we get into schematic design, we also have a costing. So we're also checking that we're on target, we're on budget, and that we can move forward to the next phase. So then the next phase that I'm going to go through with you is design. Again, very similar, several workshops. We will actually get down into the nitty gritty with staff and other representatives about, where did the sinks go in the space and how does this room function? We sit down and go through that and mark up the drawings. We will have another public open house likely at that point, and then finish up with our presentation of our design development report. It actually will get costed. I haven't put that in here, but it does get costed to check that we're still on track. And then it goes to the board for approval. And at that point, if the board approves it and we move forward, then we go into working drawings and we prepare the documents for tender and construction. So I just wanted to share a few milestones. This is us today at the first public information session, just letting everybody know that we're starting the process, and hopefully getting people excited and involved. Our survey will open today, and then it closes on the 23rd. But again, that's only our first opportunity for engagement, not the last one. We have ongoing engagement with the staff and students, which has started and is still going on. And then in December, we will produce a what we heard document, which we would present first actually to the steering committee of the school district. And then from there, we get into the schematic design and so forth. Just gonna see if I can. So I have where we are today. I just wanted to also note that this is our milestones. It doesn't show all of the engagement opportunities. So at each of these phases, we have multiple other opportunities for stakeholder input. We're talking to teachers and students and parents and neighbors. So I guess finally, we would move in the spring 2022, we would be moving into the working drawings, getting our permit applications in, and then getting ready to tender at the end of 2022. The school would likely be ready around late 2024, early 2025. And then finally, the project completion, which includes the fields and the landscaping, would be done in August of 2025. So it's a long game from here. And then while we acknowledge this is a seismic life safety project, it also gives us an opportunity to look at the school and the space and how it supports our students. So this is an image of a fairly typical school, probably one that most of us would recognize, which is sometimes referred to as the cells and bells school. You can see that essentially the corridors are lined with lockers. There's no daylight in there, and each of the classrooms is sort of its own isolated piece. And the spaces are not very flexible. So as the needs in terms of education change, these schools can be difficult to work with. In this case, you can see the school was actually built in concrete masonry unit, which makes it exceedingly difficult to change the space. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the BC Ministry of Education's redesigned curriculum. So there's a lot of documentation on this, but to give the sort of Cole's notes here, we have the highlights are personalized learning, ecology in the environment, inclusive perspectives and inclusive knowledge, and flexible learning environments. So these are sort of some overarching goals or design drivers that we receive from the ministry when we're designing a new school. We also look at sort of the students of the past and how education was perceived. So I think a lot of people have probably heard the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. And those are still important for students, but they're not the only thing that's important. In the past, education involved a lot of memorization of facts and recitation and sitting and passively listening. And we understand now that the students that we are educating today and in the future, they need more skills than that. They need to have skills like critical thinking, communication, creativity, the ability to collaborate. And these skills are really important in succeeding in today's world. So what we are trying to do is create spaces that support that. This is a graph that's just looking at sort of the way the philosophy on teaching has really shifted from standardized kind of outlook to a more personalized education, so student-centered. In practice, going from teacher-centered to student-centered, and that has started to really shift with the new curriculum. And then the traditional design, which is the facilities like the image I showed you earlier, to more flexible design. And that's where, as a community, we are really lagging behind. A lot of our facilities are, 60, 80 years old even, and they don't acknowledge or don't do well in the shift towards more personalized learning, hands-on learning, those kinds of things. So essentially, we're moving away from that egg crate model of sort of isolated classrooms where we sit and listen passively, and looking at ways that we help students in hands-on learning and collaboration between teachers, more of a, I guess, recognizing that different students learn differently, and not all students learn well by sitting and listening passively. So there needs to be opportunities for teachers to work as mentors, to get their hands dirty, to try things out, and to work in different ways. And just coming back to the Cedar Hill site, I have no designs to show anyone today because we're not there yet, but I did want to share. So I'm sure most of you are very, very familiar with the site. I don't need to walk you through it, but just for those who are trying to orient to the map, we've got Cedar Hill Road here, Garnett Road on the north, Gregory on the south, and then the existing school here is shown in the dashed outline. So we've added in the minimum setbacks that are required, and then just in terms of the site, we have a we have the rocky outcropping here and densely planted area. We have a fairly steep site slope along this edge. And essentially the construction period is about a 2-year long process. So there's no ability to move the students out and then back in again. There's no other facility available to house that number of students. And so the new school needs to be built somewhere on the site, but not where the existing school is. So it would have to be built adjacent to it, which is pretty common for all schools, public schools. It's very unusual to have a place where you can move 500, 600 students for a 2-year period and then move them back again. So basically all we know is that the new school would be somewhere on the site other than where the existing school is, allowing for some circulation around the existing school so that it can remain in operation during the construction period. We also know that there are some significant trees on site that need to be retained, and so the design will reflect that. And ultimately, the design will have a new school, 2 fields, play structure, those kinds of things, all the space for that. I wanted to leave you with maybe some inspiring ideas about what the new school can be. So most of these are KMBR designed schools, and just giving you some examples of the types of learning spaces that we can build and offer to students. So this is a Learning Commons, which in the past would be called the library. And we're really in education today moving away from that sort of old idea of the library as a quiet area of solitude, but more vibrant and learning and allowing for group work and discussion and all the things that get kids excited about learning. A lot of the Learning Commons that we do have a lot of different types of spaces where kids can work. So we give them choice. Some kids work well with a little small area without distractions, and others like to sit in comfortable chairs. It can be places where they collaborate. And we're finding more and more that librarians and teacher librarians are wanting to make their Learning Commons a space where the kids want to come and hang out, and that actually encourages learning more than making it a quiet space. So music and drama, we can definitely always have to think about acoustics, which you see here is a wall full of acoustic panels there on the back, but it's also about making them flexible. So spaces that can be used for more than one purpose, that can be either a teaching space or perhaps they're used as a stage. You can have light coming into your music space. It doesn't have to be a dark, dreary space. A lot of informal gatherings. So one of the things that we know is that learning happens everywhere, not just in the classroom. And so there's lots of spaces where students can work together and collaborate, where they can have choice about the way that they work. They can also encourage those sort of social relationships and the community within the school. This is a rendering. I don't have a photo of it, but this is a project we did. Greg actually was the primary on this project, and this was his baby, and had this really amazing space under the stair, and I'll have to go and dig up some photos on it if I can. Essentially, it's become the most popular space in the school. The kids hang out there between class and at lunch. They can charge their phones and use their laptops, and they have all different ways that they can sit and use the space. And really, it was just a creative way to use the dead space under the stair, but it created a really special place for the school, and has turned out to be kind of the very heart and center of the school. So those are the kind of spaces that we look to create for students. This is the same project, but a photo from after construction. So the top of the stair was also, the landing was extended so that it could also become a sort of performance space. So this could be reconfigured. Lots of flexibility here. The doors can open onto the student patio, so you can have more more kids spilling out and really use the space. You can kind of see a little bit under the stair there, the gathering space, and a little bit of red. The servery is just off to the side. So this is also where the kids eat lunch, and we gave them all kinds of different spaces. So they have seating along here where they can open up a laptop or eat lunch in sort of a cafe style. Then there's different types of chairs and seating and tables. And then there's also integrated space for display. So there's artwork and things like that that can be displayed in the space. And then thinking about how we design classrooms. So really it's about flexibility and the ability to use the classrooms for many different things, bringing in lots of daylight. We know from studies that have been done at UBC that and other universities that natural daylight, natural ventilation contribute to learning outcomes and are so important. So we always try to make sure that every classroom has natural light. And then all of the facilities that are needed to go along with learning. It's also, I think, important in the new schools to look at the relationship between the interior and exterior, and that it makes for more pleasant spaces. It also teaches kids that they are part of that neighborhood and the environment, which I think is important. And it creates these really wonderful opportunities, like you see here, for kids to have a space that they really love and enjoy working in. Another thing we often do is outdoor classrooms. So this is one example of a sort of a space that's meant for both, social hanging out during lunch, but also can be used as a classroom. So the kids can sit in a circle and the teacher can stand here, or you can even have a small performance. We have other types of sort of outdoor natural environments and covered spaces. And then we always look for opportunities to create breakout space and informal space. We have limited funds in terms of the amount of space we can build. So we look to make the little nooks and crannies and corridors into spaces where students can do quiet work on their own or collaborate with other students and do breakout work. This is another example. So it's a corridor space and a ramp was needed. And so we integrated some seating. We also like to have interconnected spaces so that students on one floor don't feel cut off from the other students. And then recognizing that every space is potentially a learning space. So this was where we had a big blank wall. There is actually a big art piece that's gone up here, but in this case, we just covered the blank wall with the glass so that it could be a writing surface. So the students can work or give a presentation, or they can sit here and look across and you can project onto the other wall and show a video, and also just opening up into the space. So both the music room and this student commons can open up into the outdoors, and we have some microwaves and other resources here for students so that they can have their lunch and spill outside or find a space to sit that suits their wishes for the day. Just wanted to, I mentioned earlier, there's a survey which we're launching. So this is the site for the survey. It's also, as I understand, Lisa, it's on your website. It's on the school district website.
It will be on the district website following this presentation, absolutely. And then I just put it in the chat so everyone can directly link to it.
And the survey consists of about 10 questions, and I think they're really thoughtful questions. There's a lot of work that went into them, and asking about a lot of different aspects about the design and the overarching goals. And we've left spaces if you are the kind of person that wants to have a very quick click, you can. There's also opportunities to type in your answer and tell us what you want us to hear. And we are here to listen. That's what we've been hired to do. So Questions. I should also turn it over to the school district just quickly in case there's anything I didn't cover that you guys wanted to say. If not, we could do a Q&A.
Does anyone on behalf of the school district have any further information they would like to add or questions?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for listening. I know I can be a little bit long-winded sometimes, but it's really exciting. I know KNBR has been trying to assist the school district with getting the funding for this project for a number of years, and we're just really excited to be moving forward and to be involving everyone. So.
I'm just going through all the video screens. We have a couple questions in chat already for you, Kate. So we can start with chat. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand using the chat function, and we will get to you when we see that you've raised it. The first question comes from Cindy. Between January 2025, when the new school building is complete, and August 2025, when the new landscaping is complete, does this time period include the demolition of the old building so that old space will become a new field?
Yes, it likely would. So the students will move in before the project is complete, when the new school build is complete. And then that gives the contractor time for any salvage and demolition. And then there's a plan for two fields to be built, as well as some other facilities. We're not sure at this point about where the parking will be in that. Sometimes there's a third phase in the middle where the parking has to get completed. But yeah, that's the plan.
I see that James has his hand up. James, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
What I would like to, this is a very exciting project and the neighborhood will be greatly improved by it. So I compliment everybody involved. A concern that the immediate neighbors have, which I'm one, is traffic management during the construction. And of course, after the school is open. Right now, we're dealing with during the drop off and pickup of students, it's almost impossible to get out of our places sometimes. So hopefully you'll be able to get a good plan in place for traffic management during construction, recognizing other construction projects in the neighborhood like University Mall and so forth. And then afterwards, a really good drop off and pickup system so that the neighborhood doesn't become so congested as it is right now. So that I don't have a lot of input. I don't feel competent to talk about the building itself, but I would like to see, the landscaping I recognize has to be hardened because students can be pretty hard on trees and so forth. But hopefully it will be slightly above sort of prison compound standard, that would be quite attractive landscaping at the end. So those are my comments for the time. Thank you.
Thanks, James. We have Jane who has her hand up. Do you want to ask your question, Jane?
Oh, yes, thank you. Considering the burning of gas contributes to the climate crisis, and with gas being primarily comprised of methane, which is 86 times more potent than the effects of CO2, to say nothing of the detrimental health effects as we breathe it, why would gas be considered in any schools if ultimately the school district will be facing costly retrofits to get the gas out later? So I was just wondering where the plans are in regards to using gas in the building of the school.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Greg, I don't know, might have a bit more information. I'll just start with, there has been some discussion about, so right now the school's target is net zero energy. So that would mean energy for running the school is produced on site, and it's an extremely efficient school to start with. So we'll be reducing from a normal building, what the amount of energy is needed to run it. The ministry, after providing the funding, has come out with a new program looking at net zero in terms of carbon. This project didn't receive that funding because it was funded before that program came out. But I know that the school district is in internal discussions right now about how we can nonetheless look at greenhouse gas emissions. I don't have information because we haven't got a design at this point. I don't have information about the question about natural gas and gas heating. I don't know if anyone from the school district or Greg does. It may be too early in the process for us to even have that information.
Thank you.
We have another question in chat. I believe you answered this, Kate, already, but I want to make sure we answer everyone's question. This comes from Deb. Will there be phases ready or nothing ready until August 2025? I have a child who will be essentially attending during the exact 3rd-year period of construction, and I'm sad that he will have no fields and spend middle school in a construction zone.
I'm just going to go back to our schedule so I don't mix up my dates. Sorry. Yeah, can you repeat the first part of the question there? It was about the move-in date is essentially late 2024, could be December or sometime in early 2025 at this point. We don't know the exact date. So there will be some students who will be, I guess, it's essentially about 11 months of construction for the new school to be built. Does that answer the question? I might need you to repeat the date, sorry.
That's okay. No, that answers the first half of the question. And then she was just curious if students will have access to the fields during that construction period.
I don't know at this point. It's likely that the fields, that the school will end up somewhere on one of the 2 fields, and that the contractor will need some laydown space adjacent to that for machinery and for all their supplies. So it's quite possible, but we will do everything we can to give the students outdoor play space. That's something we will definitely revisit and will be part of our public open house number 2. And we'll talk about that when we know more about where the new school will be sited on the site. But that does, I'm not gonna hide the fact that when we do these school projects, oftentimes there is a period of about a year or 6 months when there is no access to the fields. We always try to maintain some sort of play area. So if we're going to lose access to the fields, we'll do everything we can to keep the courts and the climbing structure open, or vice versa. That's probably the best I can offer at this point.
Thanks, Kate. Our next question comes from David. So David, if you want to go ahead, you can ask your question.
Thanks. It follows along exactly on that. And I'd just like to know the schedule of milestones here to me seems somewhat optimistic, maybe, if that's a fair thing to say. I'd just like to know, I'm in the same situation as Deb, with a child who's potentially looking at spending most of their career in construction at the school and not really seeing the benefits. And I'm just wondering what your confidence is in the schedule, what your contingencies are like, and what the prospect of slippage, particularly around the duration of construction, is.
It's a great question. I don't have a crystal ball,
when you're talking about, the kids are going to lose their outdoor play space and their sports fields and their ability to have extracurricular sports and recreation, it really, really matters.
Yeah. And I understand that I have a kid with ADHD who needs that outdoor play space and the freedom to run around. So I fully I fully get it. I feel for the students during the construction period. I guess in terms of the completion and move-in, I cannot guarantee that the contractor will build it on time. Sometimes projects fall behind schedule and things happen. But our firm will do everything we can to make sure that they have complete, a really good quality documents, so that it would not be because of our design that they would fall behind. What I have a project recently that actually ended up being completed. It's on track to complete 6 months ahead of schedule, but that's not gonna happen here. That's happened to me once in a lifetime. So I really can't say for sure that the contractor won't fall behind during construction. I know that the school district and our team are working really hard. We've identified our milestone dates, which is a separate calendar from this, and we're hitting those target dates and making sure that everybody involved understands that we don't have the ability to move certain things in our schedule, so we can stay on schedule. But ultimately, I'm not able to guarantee that something wouldn't happen during construction and they fall behind. It does happen in construction projects.
The next question comes from Kathy. What energy sources will be used?
It's also a really great question. We have been looking at, first of all, heat exchange, so air source and ground source heat exchange. So ground source being geothermal. I don't know, Greg, if you have anything you want to add here. You were a little more involved in this in the PDR stage.
Yes, well, I think we did some energy analysis in the PDR stage in order to prepare some strategies that could get funded for the project, and the ministry has agreed to fund a number of those strategies, including the ones you mentioned, the heat pumps and the ground source heat exchange. I think what gets built into the new school will very much depend on whether the school district is able and willing to provide additional funding to reduce carbon emissions and the consumption of fossil fuels, and provide the extra cost, the extra funds for accomplishing that. As you mentioned, that's in discussion now, and we don't know yet exactly how that will play out.
Yeah, so they are looking at a photovoltaic, like solar panel system for making up the energy difference between what they can achieve through the building envelope, the ground source, and the air source.
All right, we have a couple questions about school drop-off and pickup. What will the new pickup and drop-off area look like? And they state that the current situation isn't working.
Yeah, so we also heard that from the staff when we were at the school. So we recognize that whatever we do is going to need to be better than the status quo. We don't have that design yet, but have been talking about how we can improve things. So in terms of strategies that we often use would be the vehicle circulation in one direction, and then having pickup and drop off lanes on site that are separate from the parking on site. So the idea being that it's not blocking people on the street, so going down the major thoroughfare, and also it's that people parking and pulling in and out are not blocking the pickup and drop off. At this point, we don't know where that's going to come in and out to the site and exactly what it would look like, but we've done this is a common issue with schools, and we've done lots of designs where we've drastically improved the pickup and drop off situation. So we will definitely work on that for this site. We were actually invited to come on our first site visit at pickup time so that we could, and some of the parents may have actually seen us standing out there watching, so we could watch and understand the situation. And we definitely did see some of those impacts. So we're aware of it, and we will make sure that we consider it in our design.
Our next question comes from Colin, representing a community organization. Is it possible to get a copy of your slides? I acknowledge there's the YouTube, but a set of slides would also be useful. Yes, Colin, we can we can publish this presentation on our website once we're done here. I'll post it with the survey link. Another question comes from Kathy. As you are uncertain about natural gas at this time, when will the public have the opportunity to provide opinion about that before decisions are made?
I think, well, now is a great time. We have some questions about sustainability and what people's priorities are, the community's priorities are for sustainability, because there's, you know, different ways to do it, and there's, you know, things that are more or less sustainable. So there are questions you can fill out. There's also an opportunity in the survey to add some comments. So now is great. We can also discuss it again at the schematic design. So public open house #2 is another great time to bring it up, but I would encourage you to get your comments into the survey now, because that information goes into our vision and our guiding principles, and will guide the design.
Jane has a question in the chat, but I see she also has her hand up. Do you just want to ask your question, Jane?
Oh, yes, please. Greg has said a lot of things are contingent on funding from the school district, but will a roof design be considered that will allow for the potential opportunities for the school to become its own power generator? Will the building be positioned with a south-facing roof to optimize being solar ready? And has solar been considered, including the long-term cost savings?
So the short answer is yes. It has been considered. It's part of that study that Greg was talking about that we went through for the PDR and getting funding. So we're looking at some degree of solar in order to provide the makeup energy. So first and foremost, it's about designing a building that's efficient. So the envelope of the building is efficient. It doesn't have a lot of heat gain or heat loss. And then from there, we're looking at, yes, the orientation. There's a lot we can do with the orientation with some other aspects of the design. So I'm not so worried about orientation, but the envelope is a really big factor. And we will optimize the orientation as much as we can from there. The next thing, I guess, is reducing the consumption in other ways. So we're looking at, you know, energy efficient lighting and all kinds of things related to heating and cooling, air source and ground source, heating and cooling. And then from there, once we've reduced the energy consumption, then we look at the solar. And so the solar is being looked at right now. There's discussions about whether it will be solar now or allow for it in the future when the funds are available. I don't know where that discussion is going, but it is a discussion that's going on right now with the school district and the board.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Kathy. She has her hand up. Kathy, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thanks. I did want to add a little more, being that now is an opportune time. I could also put it in the survey, but I did want to mention that the province and the federal government are very passionate about the commitment of the carbon tax at $170 per ton, that the whole intent of that is to force people to switch to alternative methods rather than using gas or any fossil fuel. So it just seems that, as you stated, you're passionate about getting things right the first time. So I'm hoping that there can be a commitment to not using gas in this school. And I realize that funding will be important, but I think it's worth fighting for, even if something else has to be sacrificed.
Yeah, and I ultimately it will be up to the school district and the funding to make sure that that happens, but there's definitely interest in that, and I would encourage you also to put it in the survey, because it may help to push that.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So we have some important considerations that people have shared in the comments. Deb shared perhaps the school district could make nearby fields available for students so they could still have extracurricular activities. And then we have a question from David again. He is asking, will the design process, oh, my screen just jumped, sorry. Will the design process be able to consider siting and phasing options that would keep one of the two fields in operation for as long as possible?
We will consider it for sure, and we will look at trying to give the students as much space during construction as we can. It's not always feasible, but we will do everything we can. So we will look at all the options and see what we can do.
I see there are some more comments in the chat. I encourage everyone to please include those comments in our survey. You can find the survey on our district website, sd61.bc.ca. I don't see any more questions at this time. So any further remarks, Kate, from you, or any other questions before we conclude tonight's meeting?
I just want to thank everyone for their comments and encourage you also to put it in the survey and to reach out and join us again at the next open house when we're looking at the schematic design. But there's definitely the survey is there so that we hear from everybody, and we're looking forward to hearing more. I also those are all really good questions. I'm actually quite impressed about how engaged and knowledgeable everyone is about schools and construction and sustainability. So it's really exciting for me. Should we wrap it up? We leave it there? Any other questions, or is there anyone from the school district that has anything?
Oh, there's one last question that came from Catherine, and she's asking where she can find additional information. So all the additional information is on our district website. So it is www.sd61.bc.ca, and you'll find the survey there as well. And I've copied the survey one last time into the chat function, so you can go complete the survey now if you wish. And this meeting will also be published to our website.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, thanks everyone. And we'll hear from you soon.